In my life, the most intimate companion I've ever had was a doberman named Greta. She was intelligent, loyal, sociable, and protective of me, with a glossy coat. I adopted her to keep my wife Kelsey safe while I was traveling, but she refused to be part of Greta's puppy training. Welcome to the Butterfly Tumblr Radio channel. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and give it a thumbs up. My dearest companion was the most wonderful dog I could ever have in my life. Greta was intelligent, loyal, sociable and protective of me. She also wore a glossy coat. He had terrible breath and drooled incessantly. I'd adopted the Doberman to keep my wife Kelsey safe while I traveled, but she refused to participate with Greta's puppy training. Instead, I took it upon myself to train Greta, spending endless hours teaching her commands and forming a close bond with her. Greta matured alongside our friendship and she became more than simply a pet. She was a family member. While I was gone on business, a devastating storm devastated our town. Kelsey, who was at home alone, was afraid and asked Greta for help. Unfortunately, Greta was unable to shield Kelsey from the storm's fury and she was seriously hurt. When I returned home, I discovered Kelsey in the hospital recovering from her injuries. I was horrified and hated myself for not being there to defend her. Greta, sensing my remorse, remained by my side, providing constant support and comfort. In the weeks that followed, I promised to make things right. I dedicated myself to learning more about how to care for Greta and ensure her health. I also made it my aim to develop our link so that she always felt loved and safe. Greta and I were closer than ever. Over the course of the months, we overcame obstacles together, learned from one another, and became inseparable. Our friendship became a tribute to the strength of love and loyalty, demonstrating that even in the darkest of circumstances, there is always hope and the potential for recovery. Greta's original orders were all in German, but a trainer suggested teaching her a subset of basic ones in English for Kelsey. Greta formed a stronger bond with me than with my wife. She was loyal to me, but she also looked after my wife when I was away, because Kelsey was important. It was not unexpected then that she waited patiently for me. When I opened the door to our home, Greta, not Kelsey, was present. I touched her head and got a nice lick on my palm. I still had that habit, but everyone has their quirks. The big dog whined at me. She could see. I was stressed. It's okay, girl, everything will be okay. I was hoping it would be Kelsey and I disagreed before I went. This is not the first time we've discussed this topic. When we met shortly after college, we had many meaningful chats before our relationship grew too serious. She had a rough break during her sophomore year, which influenced her trust in men and their pledges. One item we explored was the possibility of having children. We both wanted them at first, but she had been unsure about it throughout the 8 years since we married. Prior to my latest trip, I had a dispute with my girlfriend. This time, however, we reconciled before I went and she informed me that she would be ready to begin trying for children. When I returned, but there was something strange about the way she stated it, her words and wording. I couldn't put my finger on it, but they made me uncomfortable. When I returned, I could tell Greta was also apprehensive, more than she should have been. Just to mirror my mood, her submissive demeanor was in stark contrast to my funny, cheerful girl's typical conduct. I heard Kelsey call out from the living room. "We're in here, Aaron, we." Someone else was inside the house. Greta was on edge and I understood why. I was at a residence. It feels different when there is an invader inside. Okay, let's go. We turned the corner from the entrance to the living room and spotted Kelsey sitting on the couch next to a man who was familiar, but I couldn't place him. They sat close together on the couch. They rose up when we entered and the man offered his hand. "Julian St. Croix. Kelsey has told me so much about you, Aaron." Now I understood who had broken Kelsey's heart, her ex. I shook his hand and noticed that his grasp was solid. Then he tried to make it overly strong in order to assert dominance. I didn't like him when I first saw him and I didn't like him now. He was a tall man slightly taller than I. He smiled warmly, displaying his well-aligned teeth. Dressed casually. His outfit was attractive but modest. His fit physique was attained by consistent exercising, blonde and tan. He appeared healthy and outgoing. Everything about him suggested a hardworking individual who had earned his success. He was the complete antithesis of what I loathed in a person, the self-made success tale, who refused to take anything for granted. I started at home plate with 2 strikeouts and a prejudiced umpire. My parents were both working, but we still needed help from food assistance programs. I persevered through college but was burdened by a pile of student debt. I improved my physical strength via diligence at my night job and then maintained it with free weights at the leisure facility. He displayed muscle-claiming mass, but without actual strength. On the other hand, possessed actual muscle strength without much mass. The flesh and bone grip on Julian St. Krause's hand highlighted some things that could only be accomplished by hard work. The loser repeatedly squeezed his fist, attempting to restore his control. "Aaron, you have an impressive grasp there." Kelsey stood between us. Her voice was filled with anxiety. "Aaron, how was your trip?" I looked at them, then at the way she stood. She wasn't trying to halt a brawl, not really. Her posture reflected her concentration. She shielded him from me, unconcerned about what I might do to him. Everything was going nicely until I got home. "What's this attractive dude doing here?" He stiffened, but Kelsey intervened. "Let us all take a deep breath. We've already gotten off on the wrong foot and there's a lot to talk about." She motioned for Julian to sit down and questioned, "Would you like a drink, Aaron?" "No, what do you mean?" "There is plenty to debate." Her smile seemed slightly strained. There's a tiny suggestion of concern beneath it. "Why not take a seat, Aaron?" She avoided using her customary pet names such as honey or babe. This was rare for Kelsey. My annoyance developed into a sinking sense. As a negotiator, I'm good at detecting small shifts in people's behavior and words. My ability to comprehend how individuals open up or close off in different situations is critical to my job. Failure to notice these shifts could cost my employers millions. In this scenario, it appeared like I was facing a situation that could cost me even more than that. I chose to keep her off balance. "How long?" Kelsey appeared puzzled for a brief while. "What do you mean? How long have you been close to him?" She seemed astonished. "You two appear to be quite comfortable together, and while you haven't stated that we should talk about, it's evident that's what it is. When I entered, you were sitting too close. You mentioned that we were in the living room, not I. Julian has appeared pretty passionate since he began speaking, and you appear concerned that I will become irritated with him. So how long have you been close to him?" My wife started to respond, but he cut her short. "Since before you two got married, you didn't know, right?" I kept a serene expression as I sat down with a man who was hiding his anguish from the person who inflicted it. "No." I turned to Kelsey and asked why Julian attempted to speak, but I silenced him with a glare. Kelsey sat next him. "Aaron, we truly cared for each other. Julian, my high school sweetheart, went to college 2 years before I did. He asked me to find someone to look after me until he returned. You were a kind person. I believed you'd protect me and I'd make you happy." Aaron lifted his eyebrow, so that he was a bad former partner. "That was only a tactic to persuade me to protect you. I feel like a knight in shining armor for you." She looked away. Her speech was packed with emotion. I was annoyed with him. It wasn't entirely. It wasn't just a farce, and I knew we disagreed on what our marriage should be like. That was part of the reason he departed. He needed to be free of my expectations in order to become the person he needed to be, but there was always the chance that one day he'd return. She paused. Then she turned to him. "So how many times did your father age you before you discovered your fortune?" He opened his mouth and she said, "Please listen. I want you to know that someone in this room sees through your good intentions." Turning back to Kelsey, she asked, "So did you consider me as a backup plan in case he didn't return?" Just waiting for his seat to get warm, she stopped searching for the appropriate words. "Why did you marry me?" I sincerely care about you, Aaron. I have tremendous feelings, for you've been so nice to me. Very caring. I understand how difficult this is, and I apologize, but what Julian and I have is genuine love, the type of love that occurs only once in a lifetime, and he wanted to make sure I was safe, which made me chuckle, but not to the point of personally caring for you. He frowned. Cal. How did you imagine this would play out? Did you think I'd just reply, oh, go be with your true love? Kelsey looked down at her interlaced hands on her lap. I recognize it is not fair to you and I really apologize. However, I was hoping you would wish us well. I will not be remaining here and there is nothing you can do to change this. So could you simply let me go without resistance? This is already proving challenging for me. My voice was dripping with contempt for the professional negotiator. The mask had fallen away. There was nothing more to win, so why continue? You self-centered person, is it difficult, for you've been dating your college lover since we married, and our marriage has always been a lie. Now I meant to feel horrible for being dissatisfied with how I've been treated. We were talking about having children before I went and I stopped looking at them. You too. They shifted uncomfortably. That is why this issue has occurred now. Did you approach him and say that I've been pushing for it and now it's time for him to make a decision? She nodded. I wanted to wipe the self-satisfied look off his face as he talked. Aaron, I appreciate what you done for that. I might have let her get away from me if you hadn't been so insistent, but now he seized her hand and kissed it theatrically. She finally gets her happy ending with the man she has always loved. Your yearning for children made me realize how much I dislike the idea of you parenting them. He chuckled. The mocking laugh of a privileged person used to demonstrate their superiority and remind others of their growing power. I stood up. My heart swelled with emotion as I prepared to confront him. Greta, who had been seated at my feet, rose as well, her body tensing like a steel trap to match my ferocity. You weren't deciding between having my children and going to be with him, right? You were deciding who would raise his children. He swiftly stood up, poised for a confrontation, a determined expression on his face. Yes, and I determined that I don't want to raise my children with someone who isn't a solid role model. Thank you for caring for Kelsey, even if your efforts may not have been sufficient, but I can take over from here. The man gently lifted Kelsey to her feet and stated, we are leaving now, you get to keep it. He motioned towards their house, the one I'd worked hard to acquire, the one we intended to raise our children in. All of this. She does not require any of your assets such as they are. That is our gift to you, get to retain everything but her. You will be served papers at work on Monday. I felt a tremendous desire to retaliate against him and Kelsey, but I knew I couldn't win. I could overwhelm him. Sure, he was frail and I wanted to see him collapse, but I knew I would face major consequences for my actions. Kelsey wouldn't stay. She would never stay. I did not want her to knowing what I know today. Get out. Even I sounded defeated. She glanced up at him with a confident yet sympathetic expression. He had won. He was her supporting partner. I was simply a buddy who had been there for her for a decade. Then I saw it. I saw in her eyes something I couldn't leave unanswered and live with myself. She admired him. My wife had never, not once, not even during our wedding. He looked at me with appreciation. She might have loved me, but only as a devoted friend. Kelsey gazed at me in the same way she did at Greta. She looked at Julian as if he were her role model. They went to the foyer, her admiration for him and his smile towards me. I let them go for a few while before tapping my hip twice and following with Greta at my heels. They were almost at the door when I said, wait, I'd like to say a few more words with you, friend. He turned to me, rolling his eyes. What you lost, wimp, the better man won. So what could you possibly say that I could give a damn about Greta? My sole faithful companion pricked up her ears. I pointed to the intruder who was carrying something. Everything occurred at once. My sweet girl transformed into a fierce protector, a formidable force of muzzle, sinew, claws and teeth. She was halfway to Julian when he started to react. Panic filled his face as he threw his arms up. I raced towards my shocked wife. A few steps behind. Greta. Kelsey was attempting to come between Greta and her lover. Ready to protect her beloved from harm. Greta accidentally collided with the aggressive individual, forcing him to stumble. Kelsey told Greta to stop preparing to hit the dog. When I walked in, I wrapped my arms around Kelsey and lowered her to the ground. My considerable weight and strength proved useful in this case. We struggled briefly, but Kelsey appeared as limp as a doll. In a matter of seconds I made her kneel. Kelsey's powerful hold would lead to her role model's collapse. I'd make sure she saw it. The non-aggressive person did not know how to defend himself. He'd never encountered anything more deadly than a badly prepared intrigue. Greta grabbed him by the neck and choked him. Julian and Kelsey both yelled. I let out a mad laugh. His shouts faded as he breathed his dying breath, transforming into a faint gurgling sound. Greta stood tall and held a piece of flesh in her lips. Julian reached out to Kelsey and me, his eyes filled with terror, silently pleading with his lips that could no longer form words. She couldn't assist him, and I wouldn't. Kelsey wailed and cried as his final breath departed his dying body. I let out a growl. Greta, she tilted her head, staring at me with curiosity. Come, I replied, motioning for her to join me. Her mouth dripped blood as she trotted the short distance to Kelsey, straining to maintain her form. Thank you, God, please. No, I did not, and neither did we. I adore you. Please do not do this, don't, Aaron. I sincerely apologize. Her words became jumbled screams of terror as she recoiled from the beast that used to sleep next to her. When I was traveling, the one who had slain her boyfriend without hesitation obeyed my command. Greta, my former wife, screamed and thrashed, pleading for her life. Give mommy kisses. Greta pushed forward and giggled at Kelsey's face, making pleasant little noises. I let my old love fall to the floor and stood up, took out my phone in dialing 911. There has been an accident at my house. An intruder was killed. Then I summoned my loyal companion and went to sit in the living room to wait. Kelsey came in angry and hurling accusations. Greta's kisses left blood on her cheeks. She resembled a doll, a puppet without Judy. You will not get away with this, you monster, I will expose. You are a killer and you will face the consequences. I giggled and wiped Greta's face with a napkin. It's only our word against yours. I walked in via the garage and noticed a large strong man in my house, someone I did not know. I knew my wife was alone and I was concerned about our safety. My weapon was upstairs, but my dog, who had been waiting for me by the garage entrance, was there beside me. I told her to go after the invader. Unfortunately, I had no idea that the trespasser was an old college acquaintance who had come to visit. My wife had not told me about it sooner. What an unfortunate misunderstanding, she yelled. It will not help. I will reveal everything. Tell them what we have done. Tell them I'm divorcing you. I simply smiled at her. Oh no, I didn't realize that until later, officer, she planned to have me served. What a surprise. Of course, losing someone is always heartbreaking, but I can't be asked to mourn for someone so awful. I smiled heartily at her, realizing that even if she created a media frenzy, it would not lead to a conviction for me. My voice had an unsettling quality to it that I had not anticipated or appreciated. But will you remember him, kill, for the rest of your life? Every time you close your eyes, you will see the love of your life battling to breathe. The brightness disappeared from his eyes. If only you had known the German term meaning stop. Perhaps he would still be alive if only you and he hadn't treated another human being as a pet, as a resource to be used. Perhaps you could still have him. She yelled out, you are a monster. Oh Kelsey, I've become what you've created in me, you and him both. So if I'm a monster, what are you? I softly pat Greta's head. Come on, sweetheart, who wants a treat? Greta eagerly followed me as my wife collapsed to her knees, sobbing, fighting to accept that she would never hear her master's voice again. Here is the next story. Growing up in a lower middle-class neighborhood, I learned about community from my neighbors and schools during college. I stayed at home because one of the world's top engineering universities was close. From the ages of 18 to 21, I helped girls with their homework and they tutored me in that field. I was fine and the girls were delighted with my abilities. Throughout the ACT, I developed a reputation for being patient, discreet and compassionate. I did it with 11 different ladies, the majority of whom did not have committed relationships. The exception was Emily, whose given name was Emma Emily. My age and height were tall, curvaceous and highly active. She enjoyed athletics and aspired to run a text video studio. I assisted her with mathematics and business topics. We were close 6 times in each conf. Ration, leaving an indelible impact. She would call late at night and invite me over. I never fell in love with Emily, but I admired her and would have done everything for her, even without intimacy. During my final year of college, I created an advanced programmable encrypted proximity detector, comparable to EZ-PASS, but designed for secure systems. It was adopted by firms, government agencies and the military, necessitating that I gain a security clearance before patenting. The invention's gene irritated significant royalties, prompting me to form 2 firms for product sales and research. My lawyers set up a network of shell and holding corporations to administer them, with me as the ultimate owner. Only the CEOs and CFOs were aware I was in charge. Others knew me as the head of new product engineering by 24. I had established these frameworks and was looking for a committed relationship, despite my social anxieties. After several efforts at dating, I met Lisa at the age of 26, who was the most attractive lady to express genuine interest in me. Lisa shown no interest in my work, which was beneficial for a prenuptial agreement. Gail, my trustworthy attorney, insisted on a prenuptial agreement indicating that stocks, interests or royalties from firms or inventions would stay separate property. Lisa had her father study it and sign without inquiry. Our physical relationship was always gratifying. After 2 years of marriage and our first child, Sarah, I ran into Emily on the street while visiting my parents' place. I offered to buy my parents a new home, but they loved their current neighborhood. Emily looked fantastic and was better dressed than I'd ever seen her. We went for coffee and she told me about her new enterprise, the XJA website, but she was struggling financially and needed an additional $2,000. I offered we meet again in a week at the same time and place and that I introduce her to an invest. She was overjoyed and gave me a huge embrace and a kiss on the cheek. As we parted, I thought about it for a week. $22,000 was a tiny sum for me, and despite the contentious nature of her business plan, I cared about her. A week later we met again and she looked much better than before. She wore more revealing outfits that highlighted her great body, exactly like when we were in college. Her complexion and hair looked better than ever. As soon as our coffee arrived, I handed her an envelope with $2,000 in cash. Emily felt extremely moved. I was astonished to see her cry, given her gruff exterior. She offered me a stake in the website, but I politely declined. I intended it to remain a gift with no ownership. She flirted, promising me the best experience of my life with her body and drive, despite believing she could keep her word. I declined again, emphasizing my love for my wife. Your wife is a lucky woman. As we parted ways, Emily stated this through tears. If there is anything I can do for you, please ask. I smiled and hugged her, wishing her great luck. I was a little uncomfortable when I became aroused during the hug, but I soon moved away when I observed she was nice and didn't say anything. Lisa and I have 2 more children. Another girl named Emma. No, she was not named after Emily. It was my wife's decision. There was also a boy named Michael. While our relationship with Lisa remained fulfilling, I gradually discovered she was superficial and materialistic. Despite this, I absolutely adored her. She was the only lady I had ever loved. More importantly, she had given me 3 beautiful children. Sarah, who was 12 at the time, acquired her mother's beauty and the best aspects of both our personalities. She was as clever as I was testing at the genius level, but far more socially skilled. Emma was a gorgeous girl at 10, with some of my features less striking than Lisa's or Sarah, but she was immensely compassionate, loving and empathetic. She not only enlivened any room, but she was also intelligent. Michael, at the age of 8, was a fun-loving and athletic youngster who may have inherited Lisa's familial traits. In order to relate with him, I became interested in baseball and basketball. He was usually happy, got along well with his sisters and never spoke negatively about anyone. Lisa, while having wonderful children, was not a terrific mother. Our main conflicts were about parenting children. Lisa had a rocky relationship with Sarah, frequently being extremely strict and cruel. By the age of 12, Sarah refused to go anywhere with her mother unless I accompanied her. This became troublesome when Lisa wanted to take the kids to her family's lake cottage for a week while I was at work. I had to persuade Sarah to go and make sure Lisa treated her well during the vacation. Lisa's interactions with Emma and Jared improved, but she still had some difficulties with them. Although Lisa was a stay-at-home mom, I spent as much time with the kids as she did, and in many cases I provided more focused and quality time. After 15 years of marriage and 3 great children, I was heading home from the airport following a one-night business trip. It was around 10:00 p.m. and although I had informed Lisa of my plans, she probably hadn't paid attention. I wasn't sure whether she'd be home to greet me, but I was hoping for some intimate time together before the kids got home from school about 3:30. As I approached a stop sign to drive onto my street, I recognized Mark Thompson's characteristic red Corvette. He was in the driver's seat toying with the radio while the music played. Mark was a top salesperson in one of my companies focusing on military sales. Despite not being an engineer, he possessed a thorough understanding of our technology and a high degree of security clearance. I'm curious why Mark was in the neighborhood. I parked into my driveway and entered the home, not realizing Lisa was on the first floor. I climbed the stairs to the second story. My shoes echoed down the marble corridor. Near our bedroom, I heard a sultry voice ask Raj, "Did you forget something or did you opt to generate another white fluid deposit?" While in shock, I entered the master bedroom and discovered Lisa naked with cream between her legs. I was overcome with wrath, disgust and grief as soon as I realized what was going on. I recall staggering back before. My memory faded and I awoke in the hospital. Regrettably, I quickly understand the problem. Anger, disgust, anxiety, hatred and dread flashed through my mind like lightning. I must have stood there paralyzed, mouth gaping, overcome by the rush of emotions. A deep black cloud of terrible despair enveloped me. I recall staggering back a few steps, but then my memory faded until I awoke in the hospital. A monitor alerted the nursing station and within seconds a nurse and doctor rushed into my room. "Mr. Smith, how are you feeling?" I asked a friendly nurse named Nancy, who smiled. I groaned as my head felt like it was being squeezed in a vice. "We are pleased to see you wake up so quickly," Nancy remarked pleasantly, inspecting my wrist and looking at a monitor next to my bed. "Why am I at the hospital? So how did I get here?" I asked as soon as the doctor entered the room. "Mr. Smith, my name is Dr. Petra and I am a short, charming Indian female doctor. Allow me to inspect your eyes first and then I'll explain everything." She carried on with Nurse Nancy holding my wrist. Dr. Petra examined my eyes with a little light, moving it back and forth for almost 2 minutes. When she was done, Nurse Nancy let go. Dr. Petra smiled as she informed that I had a concussion. According to my wife, I tripped in the bedroom, landed on the marble floor and banged my head. Fortunately, my vital signs were normal and the concussion was less severe than anticipated. As I remembered why I had fallen, I was overwhelmed with sadness. I called for a bath bag and Nurse Nancy quickly placed one beneath my chin. Dr. Petra noted that the vomiting could indicate a more severe concussion, but there were no other symptoms. I wondered if it was because I was reliving an emotional crisis before to my fall. Dr. Petra affirmed that this was certainly conceivable and inquired whether I had ever faced such a situation. I complained that I didn't manage it well. Emotionally, when I saw another man's white fluid oozing from my wife, My 3 children raced in, each wanting to reach me first. "Darlings, do not touch Daddy's head or neck." I chuckled, attempting to hug all 3 of them with my arms. They were all speaking at once, one more eager than the other. Regardless of my physical and emotional state, I couldn't help but laugh. A genuine laugh may have hurt, but a giggle seemed required. After 15 minutes, Nancy spoke with Lisa, who said, "Children, Daddy needs to rest, so we have to leave. Kiss his hands goodbye and we'll see him again tomorrow." The children kissed my hands and waved as they departed. Sarah felt better. Michael appeared to be well, but Emma burst into tears when she saw me in the hospital bed and moved away fast. Lisa instructed them to meet her in the elevator lobby before carefully approaching me. Preparing for my reaction, I closed my eyes and listened. "John, I'm so sorry you had to see me like that. I didn't want you to find out. I regret not being the wife you deserve. I hope we can talk about this when you're feeling better." She added, her voice trembling with sorrow and sadness, but no tears. When I didn't react, she said, "Maybe you will feel like talking Tom tomorrow. If so, please phone me." Her last words were telling. It was evident she had no intention of visting me in the hospital unless I requested a chat. Otherwise she would not turn up. Dr. Petra reappeared approximately 20 minutes after Lisa had departed after evaluating me again. She commented, "You don't seem too upset." "After talking with your wife, I didn't speak to her, just replied blankly. But while I'm still extremely grieved by what's happened, I believe I can turn my feelings into action. I will not be sick again." "That's excellent to hear," she remarked, smiling. "Doctor, how long do I have to stay here?" "I would recommend 1 more night. Then if your checkup is satisfactory, you can depart. However, you should rest for at least a week and avoid going to work for 3 or 4 days. I demand," she said, firmly, with as much authority as a 5-foot-tall lady could manage. "I promise," I chuckled before reaching out and taking her hand. "Please do not notify my wife that you are releasing me on Friday morning. I can't ask you to lie, but if she asks, could you say I'll have to remain till Saturday?" "I can handle that." Dr. Petra chuckled. "As long as I don't have to lie in response to a direct question, I'll tell Nurse Jenkins the same thing." After a full dinner, I called my parents, who for obvious reasons had not contacted Lisa, and asked my assistant at home for a legal pad and pen. That night I was too tired to begin jotting down everything I needed to do, but I planned to get organized first thing in the morning. Lisa returned with the kids around 3:50 on Thursday afternoon. As predicted, she had not bothered to pay me a visit earlier in the day, and I had no intention of contacting her. Nancy reported that Lisa called the nursing station once to check on me by the time the kids arrived on Thursday. I felt considerably better. Not only was I physically healing, but I also had a really productive day. Several people from my office paid me a visit, as did my lawyer, Gail, who handled my prenuptial agreement, and my parents joined me for lunch. None of this was related to my proximity sensor research. It was all about organizing my life after work. After a pleasant half-hour with the kids, as I had directed Nancy earlier, she came in and informed me that I needed to rest. Lisa followed the same process as the first day, but this time I kept my eyes open while she spoke to me. "Sweetheart, you didn't call today to beg me to come talk about our problem," she added quietly. "I suppose I wasn't important enough for you to verify if I was alive or dead, unless I called." I responded, attempting to keep my sarcasm under control, but failing. "That's not fair, honey," she said quietly. "I didn't want to bother you. If you weren't interested in talking," I responded sarcastically. "I'll probably be ready to talk this weekend, darling. I really apologize. Once they let me out. John, I hope we can get past this," she muttered. She grasped and kissed my hand, but I did not react. "Bye," she replied quietly and waved as she departed. It wasn't lost on me that she didn't declare she loved me or that she would quit her relationship with Mark Thompson. The only true remorse I had was that she had been caught. The remaining 10 of my plan, which I hadn't fully developed yet, would be simple to figure out now. Lisa's parents paid me a visit shortly before visiting hours ended. I was a little startled until they hinted at the cause for their visit. Lisa apparently thought it would appear bad if she threatened me with losing the children in the event of a divorce. So she had her parents deliver the message in. Instead, Lisa has told us about her mistake. Her mother spoke, grasping my hand. "Oh, seriously, what is that?" I inquired sarcastically after a long silence from her mother. "You understand exactly what it is. This is what caused your accident. I hope you are able to forgive her. John, you are such a lovely person and a caring father, and not being able to spend every day with your children would be devastating." Her mother proceeded. "You right, Ruth." I responded somberly. My serious demeanor was merely an act. My primary goal was to obtain sole custody of the children. After a few more minutes of required chat after Lisa's parents delivered their daughter's message, they left any ambiguity about what I needed to do was now eliminated. Dr. Petra examined me again on Friday morning before approving my release from the hospital. "Remember to rest for at least a week," she suggested Scout's honor. I joked attempting a Boy Scout sal, despite never having been a member. Dr. Petra chuckled, which was a positive indication. I thanked Nancy and offered her a $500 tip, but she refused owing to hospital policies. Instead, I gave her a cautious hug and left with my assistant, Jack, around 10:00 a.m. Getting revenge on Mark Thompson would be simple. I could get him fired, but that would not be enough. I intended to ruin his career. Simply allowing him to find another work with comparable salary would not suffice as punishment. I needed to ensure that he lost his security clearance, making it hard for him to find a job with equivalent pay or status. After meeting with Gail and a divorce specialist, she recommended and obtained Mark bank account information from payroll because his salary was direct deposited. My next move was to meet with Emily. Why her she would assist me get exclusive custody of my children. Jack drove me to Emily's office, but I begged him to stay in the car. Even though Jack would be completely aware of my plans. I needed to meet with Emily alone. I had called ahead, but Emily appeared pleasantly delighted to see me. "Woo there, Emily," I chuckled as she rushed towards me. "I have a concussion, so I can't give you the enormous embrace I want. How about we just kiss each other's hands?" "You rascal," she giggled. "You probably got the concussion, so I wouldn't smother you." We exchanged hand kisses, a less than satisfying greeting given the circumstances, but it would work for now. Emily looked great. She was dressed elegantly but professionally, and she looked as thin as she did when she was 18. There were a few gray hairs, but they lightened her appearance. She was still really lovely. "Come into my office," she said, firmly grabbing my arm after expressing my joy at meeting Emily again. I got right to the point. "I need your help, Emily," I said, my sadness returning anything. "John," she said, clutching my hand. "You have no idea how much I want to help you, no matter what it is. You helped me realize my dream, so long as it does not involve killing anyone, count me in." That statement, combined with her big smile, elevated my spirits much higher than I had anticipated. "Okay, here goes," I chuckled. I went into great detail about what had happened and which aspects of my reaction need her aid. This included underlining how important my children were to me and even giving her images of them. When she learned that my middle child's name was Emma, she froze. "You named her Emma?" she gasped. I understood precisely what she was thinking and, given the circumstances, there was no reason not to elaborate a little. "Yes, after my favorite person from before I was married," I responded with a large grin. Her eyes welled up. She burst into tears and yelled, "You jerk, I have only cried twice in the last 10 years, and both times it was because of you." I grinned as I squeezed her hand. "Hey, tears of joy are excellent. I could use some now. How can I help make this happen?" she asked, brushing away tears. "I need you to feature my wife on your website and make payments to her bank account." After she recovered from her first shock, we had a lengthy talk about the circumstances. She had several fantastic ideas, including one really brilliant one. She encouraged you to ensure that this cannot be traced back to you, especially given our previous history association. Is this what you're calling it? I chuckled, say nothing. She giggled. It is my turn to educate you. I know someone who can handle this on a paid basis even larger than mine. No questions were asked. Simply send money to him and he will put it into your wife's bank account. Let me call him right now, a simple 4-minute phone call. Emily planned everything with her pal. She told me about the video format and how the money transfer would function. Furthermore, my friend will require your wife's signature on a document that includes a release. Can you get her to sign it or forge it? I can manage it. I said her I'll email it to you today. She added wait till tomorrow. I'll create a new email account at the library just for this purpose and I'll contact you from there after she signs. I grinned. I left Emily's office feeling elated. I took a chance by giving her a gentle kiss on the lips before departing. Fortunately, shortly after our wedding, my wife insisted on having a credit card and bank account completely in her name. I hadn't checked them before, but I will now. I could easily discover the numbers on the documents she had left in the den at home. I had a lot going for me as I plotted my revenge. I knew both Mark and Lisa's bank account details as well as Lisa's credit card number. I had plenty of my own money to cover whatever I required and Emily's assistance. In addition, my aide, Jack, was entirely devoted and trustworthy. I knew I could rely on him for anything. Let me tell you about Jack. He isn't just my assistant. He's one of my most highly compensated employees, following the CEOs and CFOs of my organization. He received his engineering degree. He excels at crunching figures and making technological improvements to my often outlandish concepts. He's also willing to do whatever it takes to assist me. That's why he picked me up from the hospital and met me at Emily's office. Also, he played Division I football in college. He started his final year as a middle linebacker measuring 6 feet 2 inches and weighing 245 pounds. He's basically entirely muscle. He has trouble finding suit coats that do not burst at the seams. Sure, my revenge plans could go airy, but I had prepared well and needed to stay optimistic. After Jack dropped me off at my house without looking inside to see if Lisa was there, I had lunch and then called Lisa's cell phone. Hello, sweetheart, I'm really delighted you phoned. Do you want me to come visit you? She warmly greeted me after seeing my phone number on her caller ID. That will not be necessary. I responded harshly. I was released early, so I'll pick up the kids and take them for milkshake. We'll get home around 5:30. Oh, I should prepare a beautiful homecoming meal for you. She added, attempting to seem cheerful. Don't ruin their appetites. I shut her off. Thank you for your parenting advice. I replied sarcastically. See you. At 5:30, the youngsters were overjoyed to see me, asking about my health and enthusiastically recounting their activities. They were even more excited when I told them we were heading for milkshakes at their favorite malt store while we were all enjoying our shakes. I decided to open up to the kids. I want you to understand that certain things will change in the future, and it's not your fault. I started gently and straightforwardly. Sarah was not fooled for a second. She instantly realized where this was going. If you and Mom divorce, I'll stay with you. Sarah blurted out. Are you two getting divorced? Emma inquired, her face indicating concern. Now let us not jump to conclusions. I reassured them, especially Emma, who appeared abruptly depressed. Mom and I are having some issues and I'm not sure how it will turn out, but I want you to know that we both love you very deeply and you three are not to blame for anything. Sarah astonished me yet again. You love us wholeheartedly, but does Mom actually have one? Mommy loves us. Michael joined in. Don't be too sure. Squirt. Sarah shot back, attempting to maintain the peace. I softly placed my hand on Emma's. Sweetheart, Mom ate us, all of you. She sometimes struggles to express it. let us not think negatively of her. Okay, let's hoping everything works out. Emma sniffled quietly, but Michael and Sarah appeared to recover swiftly, especially when Michael joyfully inquired. Are you coming to my Little League game at noon tomorrow? Dad. We are playing against the Ravens and I am pitching. I would not miss it for anything, friend, I chuckled. What are your plans for Saturday, girls? I asked. Happily, I missed my customary Thursday update due to being in the hospital for 3 days. By the time we arrived home at 520, all 3 children appeared peaceful. Throughout Lisa's greeting, I made sure that one of the children was always between us to avoid all physical contact with her. After the kids went to bed that night, I went to the guest room. Don't you want to talk? Lisa asked. I have a splitting headache from my concussion and all I need to do is take my painkillers and sleep. It'll probably be tense and I don't want to disturb you. I said, swallowing 2 Tyne pills that I passed off as prescription pain relief. Then close the door. I'm available to talk whenever you're ready. Lisa called out as the guest room door closed. I successfully avoided any real conversations or closeness with Lisa on Saturday and Sunday, and I began carrying out my plan. The first tasks were simple. I used Lisa's credit card on Saturday morning to order 2 small high-tech video cameras and motion detectors for express delivery to the house by Monday at the library, and I printed out the contract that Emily had emailed me to the account I'd set up for that purpose, immediately deleting it. I also printed out new beneficiary and health insurance forms from my company's database, attaching the contract for Exite second to last in the stack and indicating where Lisa needed to sign them. I knew Lisa would be agreeable for the weekend, but not for long. On Sunday, I handed her the documents informing her that they were updated. Health, disability and life insurance forms needed to be updated, with her and the children listed as co-beneficiaries. I handed her the paperwork and advised her to peruse them at her own speed. I figured she wouldn't read everything carefully, maybe only scanning the first few. When she saw her name written as a beneficiary, she grinned plainly, thinking that, despite my distant manner, divorce was not on my mind. With a huge smile, she returned the signed forms to me mere minutes after I handed them to her. All signed, darling, she said, as she handed them over while I was preparing a poker game with Emma and Michael. Thanks, I replied casually, placing the documents in my open briefcase and dealing the cards. I then phoned the CEO of the company where Mark Thompson worked, directing him to arrange for security checks by the federal agency in charge of our security clearances for the 5 employees in Thompson's section. Because of the sensitive nature of our job, we perform random security checks, similar to how some firms conduct random drug testing to ensure that no employee suspects. It was begun by their employer rather than the government. Lisa insisted on speaking with the kids on Monday morning after they had departed for school. John, we cannot overlook what occurred. If we do, it will worry you and jeopardize our relationship. She started sitting across the kitchen table from me. I wanted to respond with which connection, but I kept back. Instead, I told Lisa my head is still spinning and I haven't processed what I saw. I need to cleanse my head so we can have a meaningful talk. I will not hurry into anything. Okay, sweetheart. She said after a brief pause, appearing content but not fully delighted. I hope you feel well soon. However, I genuinely want to show you how much I care for you. IV miss you. I have a social committee meeting at the country club in approximately a half hour. I'll return around 2 to pick up the kids from school. Will you be okay without me? She asked. I wanted to reply that I'd find out soon enough, but I restrained my tongue. Have a great time. I will be all right. I informed her that she was making it too easy. The cameras arrived about a half hour after she left by courier. I called Jack and they came over together. We spent less than an hour installing cameras, switches and motion detectors in the master bedroom. We used latex gloves to avoid leaving fingerprints or DNA. After that we configured the feeds to stream to Lisa's computer. While I'm good with computers, Jack is a genius. All we need is her password and I can connect the cameras to her computer in 10 minutes flat. My laptop is equipped with top-notch password cracking software. I'll send mine to hers and get started," Jack stated while still wearing his latex gloves. When Jack started the software, he began to remark while this runs, but was interrupted by a beep. "What is that?" I asked. "Is there anything wrong with it?" "I do not think so, holy crap. It's already cracked." He laughed. "How is this possible?" I inquired, surprised. Before starting, the software scans through the 1,000 most popular passwords. Her password is Princess and she uses more sophisticated algorithms. According to Jack's software, this is the 28th most common figures. I chuckled. She never listened to my recommendations to use more safe passwords with symbols. Jack kept his word and had the cameras recording on Lisa's computer within 10 minutes. With a discrete file name 5 minutes later, he had set everything up such that I could access the file from my office and operate the cameras and motion detectors. Feeling good on Tuesday, I went to work and turned on the cameras and motion detectors. Before leaving, I arranged for one of my Cayman Islands shell firms to wire $1,000 to Mark Thompson's bank account. Emotionally, I was feeling better and physically I was recuperating well from my concussion, so I got some meaningful work done. After the kids went to bed on Tuesday night, Lisa approached me. "Why don't you return to our bed tonight? You must feel better if you could work today." "I am," I said. "I almost feel like my usual self again Wednesdays and Thursdays." I nearly believed Lisa had realized how much she had wounded me, truly loved me and was considering ending her relationship with Thompson, but I didn't let those ideas stop me from turning on the cameras as I left the house or carrying out my plans, since I knew those dreams were only illusions, not reality. That became evident once I studied the tape from Thursday afternoon. There was my loving wife. Her face flooded with joy as she stared directly at the camera. I could barely take a few minutes of it before fast-forwarding through the entire tape at 16 times the normal speed. While part of me felt grim satisfaction that the footage could back up my bid for exclusive custody of the children, a rush of grief came over me. Why couldn't she just be true to me around Thompson? Who knows if there were others? I questioned myself rhetorically. On Friday morning, I submitted the footage of Lisa's Thursday afternoon encounter to pay X. I'd arranged for $5,000 cash to be handed to Emily by Friday night. $5,000 had been transferred from the site into Lisa's bank account. The video is now available for all paying subscribers to view. Unfortunately, Thompson's face had to be cropped because the website lacked his app approval, but I was pleased that the film was published in a segment headlined "Unfaithful Wives Cheating Behind Their Husbands' Backs in the Marital Bed, How Appropriate." Over the next 2 weeks, 2 additional movies were published to the site, each resulting in a $5,000 deposit to Lisa's bank account. An additional $1,000 was wired from a Cayman Islands business to Thompson's bank account. I needed to act quickly before Lisa and Thompson got their end of Monon bank accounts and began questioning the arrangement. During those 2 weeks, I was close to Lisa but avoided intercourse as she wanted. I feigned to be moved when she pleaded for more, saying tearfully that I wasn't ready. Yet surprisingly she replied with understanding. Thompson went through a security check the day after the 3rd video was made public. Somehow the reviewer had an unpixelated copy of one of the videos with Thompson and Lisa, along with Thompson's bank statement. Thompson was the 3rd person questioned that day in his group and he had no idea how important his interview was. Knowing the CEO would be tested with a lie detector results and interview information, I obtained a transcript of Thompson's interview. At the end of the day, after Thompson was attached to the lie detector and the preliminary questions were answered, the reviewer moved on to the core of the matter. "Mr. Thompson, do you have any personal interests outside of work that could expose you to blackmail?" "No, I don't think so," Thompson said, prompting a sharp shift in the lie detector needle. The reviewer said, "I'd like to show you a video." Mr. Thompson pressing a few buttons on his iPad. "Who is the woman you were intimate with 2 Thursdays ago?" Thompson was pale as he considered whether to lie or speak the truth. He eventually confessed after considering the repercussions for his security clearance. "Isn't Lisa Smith married to one of your co-workers?" "John Smith." "John works for a connected company." "Despite the fact that we share a building," Thompson stuttered. "It's a large complex. Have you ever considered how having an affair with a married colleague could lead to blackmail? Thompson murmured. I never really thought about that. Have you received any money from overseas sources since your last clearance? Absolutely not, Thompson declared angrily. Let us look at this month's bank statement. What is the origin of these deposits? 2 distinct Cayman Islands-based companies. There was a prolonged pause. Thompson hesitantly responded. I don't know. This is something I have never seen before. There must be an error, a mistake made by 2 different Cayman Islands businesses whose ownership we cannot trace. The reviewer pressed on. Yes, someone is framing me. Thompson protested, obviously distressed. Is the footage of you and Mrs. Smith likewise fabricated? Despite the necessity to be objective, the reviewer inquired with a sarcastic tone in his voice. After a few more questions, the interview ended. Thompson remained mute, as the reviewer withdrew the lie detector electrodes and stated, Mr. Thompson, until further notice, you are prohibited from contacting anyone involved in classified information. This includes Mr. and Mrs. Smith, as well as the 2 corporations that placed funds in your account. Violations will result in prosecution. I was quite satisfied the night of Thompson's interview, very satisfied. Lisa picked up on my positive attitude and flirted with me. After dinner, we went to bed as soon as we were certain the children were asleep. I knew it was the final time we were intimate. We climaxed and snuggled up together. Lisa responded in a seductive tone, almost as if she were asking Thompson about another encounter. Darling, how about we relax for a while? Then I'll give you BJ and you duck me. Wow, she is quite the comedian. I chuckled quietly before addressing her gaze. Lisa, I will never deal with your nasty V again. Who knows how many Johnsons other than Thompson have been inside you each week? Disgusting, her reaction was priceless. After stammering out what do you mean and going crimson, she babbled incoherently and I chuckled. She eventually stormed out of bed and into the guest room. The next day, I dropped the kids off at school. Lisa gave me nothing but cold stares. After the kids had left, I made a phone call and the doorbell rang 30 seconds later. This is for you, 43. I chuckled. How dare you speak to me like that? You jerk. Lisa was incensed. I won't have much longer, which I said now, laughing out loud as Lisa opened the door. The process server handed her the divorce papers. I only heard Mrs. Lisa Smith. Yes, you have been served, along with the divorce paperwork. There were images showing her in the act with Thompson, as well as the name of the Pake's website and a password to access it. You thought I wouldn't find out. You were selling your extra videos. You sleazy woman. I inquired as she stood shocked by the kitchen table. Have you ever seen how you seem on an ex website? That is how you find out. I yelled as she held the paper containing the ex-site information. My assistant brought it to my notice and I couldn't believe. It's bad enough that you disrespected me by sleeping with that thug in our bed, but now you're broadcasting it and making money. I have no idea what's going on. She responded, tears welling up. I'm taking the kids on a weekend trip. I announced as I rose up. Make sure to employ the greatest lawyer you can. I'm confident that your professional profits from exits will be beneficial, since you will require one. That same day, Thompson was fired and let out of the building. His security clearance was cancelled. About an hour before I was set to leave to pick up the kids for the weekend, my secretary made a call over the intercom. John Mark Thompson is reportedly intoxicated and chanting your name in the parking lot. Should I call the police? No, Sherry. I chuckled, called Jack and asked him to come here straight away. This was too good to pass up. When Jack came, we went to a window in our building to see Thompson. It was a location with one of the best views on our security cameras. He was obviously inebriated, swaying back and forth. We rapidly created a plan. Jack slipped out a side door away from the camera's view. Well, I confident went out the front door. The instant Thompson saw me, he yelled, "You Damn jerk Smith. You are the reason I was fired and lost my security clearance. I know it. I'm going to bash you up. I jogged over to where Jack was waiting in front of the camera. I let Thompson get close enough to strike at me, but he barely grazed my shoulder. I collapsed dramatically, as if hit by a knockout strike. As Thompson bent over me, ready to hit again, Jack arrived on video, grabbed him and delivered a strong long forearm to his jaw, similar to tackling a football opponent. Thompson flew backward, knocked out cold. Jack helped me up and I feigned to be dazed, leaning beside a nearby automobile. Jack dialed 911. All of this occurred in front of surveillance cameras and police arrived within minutes. The fire department ambulance staff shackled Thompson to a stretcher and transported him to the hospital accompanied by a cop. I filled out the proper assault charges and documentation before picking up the kids and transporting them to a gorgeous mountain resort for the weekend. At the end of the weekend, I sat the kids down and informed them Lisa and I were getting divorced. Sarah appeared relieved, while the other two handled it surprisingly well. I told them that we would both continue to love them as much as possible. When we returned Sunday night, Lisa wasn't as nasty as I had anticipated to prepare for a potential explosion. I had relocated my most important possessions and a large portion of my clothing to a climate-controlled storage container. Despite this, I had no intentions to leave the house. After the kids excitedly told her about our weekend escapades, Lisa and I sat down and talked. I know you set up those cameras, John, but I'm not sure how you did it. She stated first, surprisingly calm. No apology, no admission of error, no, please forgive me. I answered by simply blaming myself for something that all evidence reveals I did not do, and I tried to seem outraged in case she was recording us. John, I've been busy this weekend. I've employed both a lawyer and a computer specialist. I'm still not sure how you did it, but you did a good job of covering your tracks with the unfit mother claim, and I'm hoping we can reach an agreement on custody. She answered, we can, Lisa. You grant me complete custody of the children in the house so they do not have to relocate. In exchange, I will provide you generous visitation rights. I would even buy you a house, so you and Thompson may do whatever you want. Have you heard? He has lost not just his job but also his career. I do not want to live or share a house with Mark. That's not what this is about. She said, I do not want to hear it, Lisa. I abruptly interrupted. I regained my calm and continued, you can live with whoever you wish. I honestly do not care. I am only making an offer. After a brief pause and a few tears, she resumed. Look, I understand you think I'm a terrible mother, but I'm not. I adore our children and cannot handle the notion of living apart from them. Fighting things out in court will not help either of us. I know you'll attempt to smear me in whatever way you can and I can't handle it. Neither of us wants the kids to know all the specifics or watch those movies. I agree that we shouldn't tell the youngsters all the information. I wondered aloud, what are your suggestions? I inquired, genuinely curious. My lawyer recommended that we engage a mediator, ideally a former family court judge. I'll seek sole or joint custody and you can do the same. We will let the mediator consider everything, including the children's wishes, and will follow whatever decision is reached. This allows us to keep everything confidential and achieve a resolution faster. She responded. Her reasonableness startled me. She appeared to perceive my stronger personality. Perhaps after talking to Mark Thompson, let's organize a conference with our lawyers early next week to go over the details I proposed. I agree with your plan, except one item. I refuse to submit to joint custody under any circumstances. It's too hard on the youngsters and I want exclusive custody. If the mediator decides joint custody, I will accept it. But that is the only scenario I am open to. I moved to the guest room and Lisa took over the master bedroom. I didn't tell her why, not wanting to add to her tension, but I couldn't sleep where Thompson had been with her. I doubted my ability to detect every trace of his presence on the sheets or mattress. On Tuesday, we held a joint meeting with our lawyers. We instructed them to comply with our requests in a legitimate manner, without bargaining. We devised a contract that divided all of our marital assets equally, with the exception of what was protected by the prenup, which accounted for 90% of our wealth. The contract specified the designated mediator, a retired family court judge known for fairness, the schedule of hearing and the mediator's decision dates. If Lisa was granted sole or joint custody, I would pay her child support for 2 years or until she remarried. Lisa is prohibited from socializing with Mayberry in front of the children, an agreement not to influence the children's responses to the mediator, provisions for Lisa's relocation costs if I were granted sole custody, as well as details on visitation privileges if either of us was taken into custody, or it took us the entire day to finalize the arrangements, but we were able to execute the contract the following day. We found a mediator who agreed to handle our case and we scheduled a briefing in 2 weeks and a hearing in 4 weeks. His fees would be divided evenly among our shared assets not covered by the prenup. However, I did not insist on it being included in the contract. Lisa and I had secretly agreed that neither of us would invite anybody else into our shared home. We also resolved that anyone who needed to move out after the custody decision would do so within 2 weeks. In addition, I instructed my lawyer to threaten legal action against the Pakes site until they removed Lisa's films and repaid the money. This was easily resolved with a single call to Emily. Lisa and I were friendly while we waited for the hearing. I never tried to influence the kids, and as far as I knew she didn't either. We avoided making nasty or caustic comments, even in private. The only thing that disturbed me was that she would wander about the home without a top on when the kids were not around or asleep. I knew her intentions, but I couldn't help but ask her about it out of annoyance. "I want you to take one final look at what you're losing," she added. I couldn't help but be aroused on the day of the hearing. Despite being convinced that I had the upper hand, I was nervous. The worst-case scenario I expected was shared custody, but I badly wanted sole custody, so I was almost hysterical. Nonetheless, the hearing went very well. Just as the judge was preparing to interrogate the children, he made some remarks that really concerned me. Just before interviewing the children, he appeared inclined to grant shared custody. He gave us a surprise. "I notice you've agreed to have my interviews with the children shown on closed-circuit television." The mediator stated, "I apologize, but I cannot agree to it. I hadn't realized it until a few minutes ago, but it would jeopardize the openness and trust one require with the kids. If either of you agrees to me meeting with each child alone, I will have to refund your money and recommend you to another mediator. The children's interviews are scheduled for tomorrow, which is their day off from school. Please let me know your decision." By then, I was tempted to decline and seek another mediator who might be less inclined to joint custody. However, my lawyer advised against it, knowing Sarah's bias toward Lisa, as well as the mediator's previous history of following children's preferences as a judge. Sarah was approaching the age at which state law enabled her to make her own decisions, and the judge was likely to regard her advice more than any other mediator. Before Lisa and I went home, we met with our lawyers and agreed to the mediator's terms. We also decided not to follow up with the youngsters about what they had discussed. Lisa made statements during dinner that hinted at her desire for joint custody, which I was concerned the kids would notice. I gave her a severe expression but did not answer. Sarah caught my glance and gave me a subtle smile. The next day, the mediator conducted private interviews with each youngster. Michael's interview lasted only about 20 minutes. Emma's lasted around half an hour. Sarah took more than an hour. When Sarah was finished, she gave me a modest thumbs up when she was certain Lisa and her attorney were not watching. Lisa's parents followed our agreement and took the kids out to eat after their interviews. We want to drop them off at our house around 4:00 p.m. after lunch. The mediator was ready to give his decision. It startled us because he still had 1 week under the contract to make a decision. He did not even want to hear the lawyers. 30-minute closing arguments. After analyzing all of the evidence and prioritizing the children's best interests, I grant exclusive custody of all 3 children to their father, John Smith. I also believe that the case agreement reached by both parties is fair and in the children's best interests. The matter will be settled on such conditions. On Monday, I will give you a certified copy of this decision to submit to family court, together with your settlement. Thank you for entrusting me with this situation and best wishes in the future." Lisa and I both sobbed, but for different reasons. The ride home was quiet and somber. I didn't feel like boasting and Lisa was devastated. The pain of our family's breakup, even though it went as well as it could for me, given the circumstances, weighed heavily on me once more. Lisa was distant that evening when we told the kids the news, so I did the majority of the talking. Michael and Emma were sad and hugged. Lisa is honest. Sarah offered her a short hug. I spoke highly about Lisa and explained the visitation procedures to the children. Within a week of the hearing, I purchased another home for Lisa and she moved in within the agreed-upon 2-term. The children and I, together with her parents and brother, assisted her in her move. We hired movers for the major goods. She removed from our home, including the king-side bed, from the master bedroom. A few months later, when the divorce was finalized, I had a party at my home to thank everyone who had helped me, my closest friends and parents. I didn't explain to the kids why we were having the party. All I said was that we were celebrating Sarah. Now 13 of course figured it out right before the visitors came and I was finishing up in the den. She entered and closed the door. She made me sit down and then sat on my lap. "Dad, how pleased are you with how the C custody situation worked out?" Sarah inquired, surprised me with her adult approach. "Sarah, I'm really happy. Why would you want to know?" I responded. She grinned broadly. When I spoke with the mediator, I got a feeling that everything would work out. I told him about catching Mom and Thompson in the act at our place. When I got home sick one day, it completely messed me up. "Have you truly seen them?" I inquired, taking aback. "Does it matter really? Mom was unfaithful and I didn't want to live with her anyway. I knew it was best for Michael and Emma to stay with us," she said with a wide smile. She kissed my cheek before jumping from my lap and leaving. I chose to dismiss the matter entirely. But what I did concentrate on next, beginning with the victory party, was Emily. She arrived at the gathering looking amazing. She instantly connected with Michael and Emma. She spent about 30 minutes playing catch and pepper with Michael, a game at which I was never particularly adept. Emily spent time alone with Emma. I'm not sure what they talked about, but they spent an hour speaking and laughing together. Sarah was quieter around Emily than the other kids, but she appeared to like her and they talked about fashion. Emily made sure I didn't miss out on bonding with our family during the party. She drew me aside in the den, grabbed me and said, "Could your parents stay with the kids tonight and accompany me home?" As I was leaving, I told Emily, "I'm not sure what you see in me, but I enjoy being with you. Is there a chance we can have a real relationship?" She gazed into my eyes and said, "What I see in you is a kind, generous, intelligent, giving person who is great in bed. Why don't you take me to a resort for 3 days over the weekend of the 14th? We can determine whether we both desire something serious. I'm tired of messing around. I want a man who is only mine." She kissed me again and closed the door, saying, "Go home to those wonderful children." 2 years after my victory party, my life has undergone significant adjustments. All 3 children are prospering, happy and well-adjusted, and they excel academically, socially and in their extracurricular interests. Lisa has been respectful and has used her visitation rights properly. Sarah's relationship with her mother has improved significantly since we were all together. Sarah even spent 10 days last summer to Lisa's parents' lake cottage with her and the other kids, and she had nothing but wonderful things to say when she got back. My business is prospering and I'm earning more than ever. A government report was accidentally delivered to personnel who were not supposed to read it, revealing my ownership of the operational companies. Fortunately, it hasn't changed how people regard me at work. Mark Thompson left town immediately after the victory party. The lone individual who still communicates with him says he now works in basic sales for an electronics company on the West Coast that does not deal with sensitive technology. The children have completely welcomed Emily. They all consider her as a friend rather than a mother figure, and they like spending time with her. After 2 years of being intimate whenever possible, Emily decided we needed to commit to each other exclusively. She sold her website last month and moved in with my children. Despite the fact that she is not interested in marriage, she simply wants me and is happy to serve as a friend and mother figure to the children. At the same time, she operates a modest online apparel company. From an extension I added onto the house while it was being constructed, also had high-quality soundproofing installed in the master bedroom. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode of the story, please give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe to get notifications for updates.